Welcome to the meeting room out of office, live from IMEX Frankfurt. I'm James Lancaster, and I'm joined in the studio today by James Latham, founder of The Iceberg, and Gary Grimmer, Executive Chairman of Gaining Edge and Chairman of the Iceberg Advisory Board. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us in the studio today. You're both long-standing advocates of legacy and the positive impact of events. Is this an argument that has been won with government yet, or are we still a long way off? Gary?
I would say we're not close to victory. I think we got a good case. We got a good argument. We're a vitally important industry. What we do is transformative. Governments care about verticals. They care about certain industries, industry clusters and development and health and those things. What we do cuts across all that, and what we do is actually a strategic approach to delivering against all those transformative goals. So we've got a good story. We have a good position because we're really important, but government has not figured that out yet.
Do you echo that, James?
I think if you look where we were at in 2008 with the global financial crisis and then where we went into the pandemic, that was another crisis that we had to address. But I think we're in a much better position than we were. And I do think that the narrative of the sector has actually broadened to extend beyond simply the consumption of our supply chains. The reality is that we're still recognized in the main as a force for tourism. But in terms of being change agents rather than travel agents, I think we're being increasingly recognized as a piece of the critical infrastructure that's required to support government agendas in economic, social, and societal transformation.
I'm going to say I've been a bit provocative. I won't say there hasn't been progress. And in fact, I think Iceberg has made an amazing difference.
Yeah, with the Iceberg is the metaphor for business and professional events. It comes in the form of a website and a newsletter, but basically it's the curator of the sector's data and storytelling that can then be used by anyone, anywhere, to persuade governments to invest back into convention bureaus, meeting infrastructure. But it's critical to have that data curated in a resource so that other people don't have to do the curation themselves. I'm sure to a degree this will be accelerated through AI, but the reality is that we're providing a role whereby it's going to be a lot easier for people to actually accumulate the right data and deliver the right message. But to do that, we're going to have many voices in many places. And that's, I think, the key blockage that we need to unlock, because it isn't just Capitol Hill. We've got Tommy Goodwin on Capitol Hill. He's doing a sterling job for us. We've got Barbara Weisacker working for us in Brussels. But we need our man in Sheffield. We need Our Lady in Cape Town to be taking that message, because that's principally where those investments are being made at a local level.
I think we've made the case. I mean, James and the Iceberg have done a great job of building case studies. And as an industry, as a community that's in the meetings industry, I think it's really risen the acceptance, the understanding, the recognition of how important our work is and what the industry contributes to society. And it is about social, economic, and environmental transformation. So I think the case has been made really effectively to the industry. Your question is, has the industry made that case effectively to government? And I think we've made progress, so I shouldn't be totally negative, and I am being a bit provocative. But I want to get back to what James said. What we need is a concerted effort with many voices, one message that goes global, where we are saying at every level of government, whether it's local, provincial, or national, we're saying the same thing and helping them to understand why this is so critical to their own success in terms of their own transformation planning and goal setting.
And what do you want from government?
Partnership. Look, obviously, as an industry, it helps when we have the resources. At the local level, you have to have industries, convention bureaus, venues. You need the infrastructure. Then you need to go to market. And you need government to support the local civil society. To bring in conventions, you have to get the local professionals to help you invite them. And so what we need governments to do is understand the importance of civil society and to understand that engaging with civil society globally is a really important thing to do. because if we get them to understand that, they will support our efforts to get more meetings coming into our individual communities, and and essentially we'll be supporting civil society.
Does that go for you too, James? Is that what you want? An understanding ear?
I think we need to recognize the context here in the sense that I often argue that we are a tool as opposed to an industry, that we are a mechanism for governments to use to unlock their own agendas, whether it be in sectoral growth or whether it be in capacity building or the attraction of talent. If you take the context that we're in at the moment, the geopolitical context, I think we're entering a golden era for business events, because I think there's going to be a redrawing of the geography of financial and intellectual capital. And I think business events are going to be critical to unlocking the potential for governments, for places, for destinations to advance their agendas in destination development or social impact.
Were you referring there to the change of administration in the White House?
That is certainly one, but I think you have to acknowledge the fact that we're seeing a rise of populism beyond simply the United States. We're seeing it in Europe as well, because there's a lot of pressure out there. But what I do think is that those that are finding it difficult to tolerate the level of populism are looking for somewhere else either to invest or to work and live. And that's going to need some form of introduction to the alternatives, which can be sought in intellectual capitals that align to your profession, for example, or to destinations that align to your values.
Gary, do you think business events are going to move out of the United States, or do you think that's a bit premature?
I think there will be fewer international meetings that are going to the United States. I mean, in a sense, what you both just talked about was anti-intellectualism. Well, fundamentally, business events are about knowledge exchange and intellectualism. So when you have a government that's basically anti-intellectual, there's going to be a reaction and pushback. And that pushback means that there will be fewer international meetings going to America, which is unfortunate for the U.S. because that means they're losing that global trade and intellectual engagement. So U.S. is a big country, maybe they can suffer that, but it's not good for the U.S. I do think, I just have said to people, I think it's good for Canada and Mexico. If you have international meetings that we're heading to North America and they're going to pull out of the U.S., it's a bit more convenient to just go a bit north or south and head to Canada or Mexico. So I think those countries will do well. Europe may do a little bit better because some of those meetings who cancel the U.S. are just going to stay in Europe.
Are we talking about international association meetings more than corporate sector?
Yes, I'm talking more about association meetings.
James, tell us a bit about the iceberg 2.0. We've got Trump 2.0. What's the iceberg 2.0?
I'm not saying it's the same on steroids, but what we are looking to do now is to secure its future in relation to the sector. At the moment, it needs to be owned by and it needs to be driven by the industry itself. So we're currently presented by the Joint Meetings Industry Council. We're in dialogue with others to co-present the iceberg, and we're also forming a trust whereby the industry will actually own the tool, and then we're going to be applying new forms of technology to make it much more navigable, searchable. We'll be applying a layer of AI to ensure that people can navigate it and use it to create content tools of their own for the advocacy of the sector in their particular destination.
So there's investment going into it?
There is more investment going into it, certainly, but that is going to be dependent to a degree on the level of support that we secure. We're a not-for-profit. Most of our work to date has been pro bono, so at some point we're going to need to attract revenues potentially from the ambassador network that we want to create. So there's 10,000 cities. As Gary once said to me, any city that's not using business events is a city that's missing out. We need to make sure that those cities are armed with the ability to understand the value that the sector can bring. And at the same time, we're charging the equivalent of a bed night a year for those ambassadors to be given the tools to be able to advocate. And those revenues will be what we'll be reinvesting back in to the platform itself.
Can I make a distinction about Iceberg 1.0, 2.0? What I think 1.0 was, and James deserves all the credit, has done a great job of validating the importance of this industry, doing case studies, storytelling, creating a movement. So I think that there is a global movement that's very strong. The problem is it's not well coordinated in terms of the messages out there, but we need to actually animate that movement. We need to get a 360-degree feedback loop where we're providing tools, we're providing messaging that they can use for their own use in their own localities, but they're being the audience, which is the industry, meaning whoever is in the movement, which is the meetings industry largely, and that can be at a local level, that's the supply side, that's the venues, that's the bureaus. We need them, again, as James always says, with the many voices, one message, we want to help them carry that messaging, but we also want feedback from them in terms of if we're getting traction. So we're really wanting to make sure that we're animating that movement in a really effective ways and providing new tools to do that with.
You've both spoken about many voices, one message. How are you going to activate that practically on the ground level?
Principally through our partners. We have fabulous partners, from the Joint Meetings Industry Council to many of their members and many other members outside of that body. So we're working closely with ICA and with Destinations International, City DNA, AIPC, IAPCO. They're all hugely supportive because they recognize that their future is index linked to ensuring that there is sufficient investment going back into the sector. And part of that, if you like, efficiency of the iceberg is going to require better management. I've been something of an evangelist, but I think we need more people, at the Last Supper or the next supper at least. And we're working very closely now with Greg Talley and Ksenia Pola at Talley Management, who will give us the community management expertise. So I'm really excited about that partnership, and at the same time as we're transferring the platform into a trust, we'll also be transferring the management to Talley Management.
And finally, I think you were both at the Policy Forum.
I learned that wherever Greg Clark goes, I want to be there. Professor Greg Clark is an urbanist who has been a great friend of IMEX and, in fact, the whole sector for many years now. He has his finger on the pulse of city development, of national development, and he recognized very clearly and articulated beautifully, I have to say, which I'll be sharing with you, the importance of business events simply as that tool, the key to unlocking the potential for destination development. And we've heard a lot from Destinations International, particularly on Destination Next, about how this sector of communications simply once unlocked is the key to their futures. And he was brilliant. I'll have all credit to Jane Cunningham and Martin Cirque, who was supporting acts. But Greg Clark, I thought, articulated just the value of this sector really spot on. It wasn't simply about the consumption economy, it's about the value that we create. And if we get that message across to governments at every level, whether it's local, provincial, state, or supranational, then we are going to be in a much stronger position.
I like to go back to what James always said about being change agents, not travel agents. We still have a problem in this industry, even though the iceberg has done a great job. But we still have people who are putting forward a value proposition that's suggesting that the main thing we deliver is people coming to communities, spending money, and leaving. And that's actually not our value proposition. That is one economic impact of what we do. That's one economic impact of what we do, and we also have social and environmental impacts. And we have very broad economic impacts: cluster development, trade, relationships, exports. So it's really important that we get this industry to quit trying to kind of convey this or hang our importance on this notion of how many people come and how much money they spend. If we want to be in the tourism industry, that's okay, but that's not the industry we're really in.
It's happening. And when it happens, when the advocacy happens, it unlocks all sorts of possibilities. Look at what's happening at Business Event Sarawak. Look what's happening in Sydney. In fact, most of Australia now. Look what's happening in Singapore. Look what's happening in Ireland. Yeah. Look what's happening at Visit Britain. Okay, once the message gets through, the Deputy Mayor for London is using business events to unlock the life sciences cluster. Once that happens, then the investment follows. But if we don't do that, then we are a one-trick tourism pony, and God forbid anybody living in the world of over-tourism.
On that note, gentlemen, thank you both for coming into the meeting room, and we'll be back soon.